When Rose Miller saw the men in dark suits with bodyguards enter the small cafe, she knew something was about to change forever. For 3 years, she had served coffee to the elderly man in the corner booth, without knowing who he really was. What she discovered that day would leave her speechless. The clock on the wall of the Daily Grind Cafe read 6:45 a.m. when Rose Miller pushed open the glass door with her shoulder, carrying 2 bags of freshly baked bread she'd bought from the local bakery. The aroma of cinnamon and butter filled the small establishment as she turned on the lights one by one. It was Tuesday, and Tuesdays always started the same way. At 34, Rose had perfected a routine she executed with the precision of a Swiss watch. First, turn on the large coffee maker. Second, wipe down the tables, even though they'd been cleaned the night before. Third, arrange the chairs exactly how Mr. Richard liked them. Mr. Richard. Rose smiled as she placed the chair at the corner booth at the perfect angle, neither too close to the window nor too far. For 3 years, ever since she started working at the Daily Grind, that elegant old gentleman had been her first customer every morning, without fail, without exception. "Good morning, Rose." Mr. Henderson's voice, the cafe owner, interrupted her thoughts. He was a robust five-year-old man, with a bushy mustache and a perpetual smile. "Already setting up for the mysterious gentleman?" "He's not mysterious, Mr. Henderson," Rose replied, adjusting the salt shaker. "He's just an old man who enjoys his coffee in peace. An old man who arrives every day at 7 sharp, sits at the same table, orders the same thing, and never speaks to anyone except you," Henderson observed, crossing his arms. "If that's not mysterious, I don't know what is." Rose didn't respond. She knew Mr. Henderson was right, but there was something about Mr. Richard that made her feel protective. In a world where everyone seemed to be in a hurry, where no one truly stopped to look at others, that lonely old man had found a small refuge in her cafe, and she was determined to make that refuge perfect. By 6:55, Rose had finished all her preparations. The coffee maker gurgled to life, the cups were spotless, and the corner booth waited like a small sanctuary of tranquility. At 6:58, she checked her uniform in the small mirror behind the counter. Her blue apron was clean but worn, as were her black shoes, which she had polished the night before. She didn't have money for new clothes, but at least she could ensure the little she had was presentable. At 7 o'clock sharp, the cafe door opened. Mr. Richard Sterling entered with the silent elegance of someone born in another era. He was 82, though his upright posture and firm steps made him seem younger. He wore, as always, an impeccable gray suit, a starched white shirt, and a felt hat he removed upon entering with a gesture that belonged to a bygone age. "Good morning, Mr. Richard," Rose said with a genuine smile, approaching with the coffee pot in hand. "Good morning, Rose," he replied in a soft yet clear voice. His steel-gray eyes, which seemed to see more than they showed, lit up slightly at the sight of her. "How is your daughter this morning?" Rose's heart filled with warmth. "Mr. Richard always asked about Lucy, her 9-year-old daughter. Not many people did. She's doing well. Thank you for asking. She stayed up late last night studying for a math test." "And did she pass?" Mr. Richard asked as he sat at his table, carefully placing his hat on the empty chair beside him. "She doesn't know yet. The test is today," Rose replied as she poured the coffee, the rich, dark aroma rising between them. "But she's very diligent. I'm sure she'll do well. She has a wonderful mother as an example," Mr. Richard said. And there was something in his tone that made Rose feel a lump in her throat. "The usual?" Rose asked, changing the subject before her emotions betrayed her. "Please, buttered toast, no jam, and black coffee, no sugar." Rose nodded and headed to the kitchen. As she prepared Mr. Richard's breakfast, she couldn't help but think how strange this ritual was. 3 years, 1,095 exact days, and in all that time, Mr. Richard had never missed a day, not even when it rained torrentially, or when the heat was unbearable. Why? That question had haunted her since day one, but Rose had learned not to ask questions. In her experience, people who came alone to cafes early in the morning weren't looking for conversation. They were looking for a moment of peace before facing the world. When she returned with breakfast, she found Mr. Richard looking out the window at the street. There was something melancholic in his expression, something Rose had learned to recognize over these 3 years. "Is everything all right, Mr. Richard?" she asked softly, as she placed the plate in front of him. He turned to her, and for a moment Rose saw something in his eyes she hadn't seen before, a deep sadness mixed with gratitude. "Rose," he said slowly, "may I ask you something?" "Of course." Why are you so kind to me? The question took her by surprise. Excuse me? I've noticed how you work, Mr. Richard continued, taking his coffee cup in his hands. Rose noticed they trembled slightly, something she had never seen before. You arrive early, you make sure everything is perfect. You always have a genuine smile. And not just with me, with all the customers. Why? Rose sat in the chair opposite him, something she normally would never do during working hours. But there was something in Mr. Richard's voice that told her this conversation was important. My mother used to tell me something, Rose began, looking at her own hands, cracked from years of hard work. She said that in this world, there are two kinds of people. Those who make life harder for others and those who make it a little easier. And that at the end of the day, the only thing that really matters is which side of that line you chose to be on. Mr. Richard remained silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice sounded thicker, laden with emotion. Your mother was a very wise woman. She was. Rose nodded. She died 5 years ago. Cancer. I'm so sorry. She's the one who taught me to truly see people. Rose continued, and suddenly the words flowed from her as if they had been waiting all this time to be released. To notice when someone is lonely, when someone is sad, when someone just needs another person to see them and tell them, I'm here. And what do you see when you look at me? Mr. Richard asked, and there was a vulnerability in his voice that broke something inside Rose. Rose studied him carefully. The expensive suit that couldn't hide the loneliness, the perfect posture that couldn't conceal the weariness, the elegant hands that trembled slightly when he thought no one was looking. I see a man who is lonely, Rose said softly. I see someone who comes here not just for the coffee, but because this is the only place where someone is glad to see him arrive. I see someone who has lived a long, probably very successful life, but who now wonders if it was worth it. Mr. Richard blinked rapidly, and Rose realized he was fighting back tears. Am I that obvious? He asked with a sad smile. Not to everyone, Rose replied, but to someone who has learned to look, yes. Mr. Henderson walked past them, raising an eyebrow at the sight of Rose sitting with Mr. Richard, but said nothing. He had learned a long time ago that Rose had a special gift for connecting with people. Rose, Mr. Richard said after a moment, may I tell you something? Something I haven't told anyone in years? Of course. Mr. Richard took a long sip of his coffee, as if gathering courage. My wife died 3 years ago, the same day I started coming here. Rose felt her heart clench. We were married for 52 years, he continued, looking at the steam rising from his cup. She was the love of my life. When she died, I felt a part of me died with her. All our friends, our family, they were all so busy with their own lives that they just stopped calling after the funeral. I'm so sorry, Mr. Richard. On the day of her funeral, I walked aimlessly through the city. I didn't want to go back home to that screaming silence, and I found this cafe. I walked in, and you smiled at me as if my presence truly mattered, as if you saw me, not just another customer. Rose felt tears pricking her own eyes. Since that day, I come here because it's the only place where I feel like I'm still a person, where someone notices if I arrive or not, where someone remembers how I like my coffee. Mr. Richard? No. He raised a hand gently. Let me finish. For 3 years you have been the only person who has treated me like a human being. You don't know who I am, how much money I have, what power I once had. To you, I am just an old man who likes black coffee and toast without jam, because that's who you are to me, Rose said firmly. A good man who deserves to be treated with respect and kindness. Mr. Richard closed his eyes for a moment, and when he opened them, a solitary tear rolled down his cheek. He quickly wiped it away with his napkin. Do you know what day today is, Rose? Tuesday. It's the anniversary of my wife's death. 3 exact years. Rose reached out and took Mr. Richard's trembling hand in hers. She said nothing. There were no words that could fill that kind of void, but she was there, and that was enough. They remained that way for several minutes, 2 lonely souls, connected by simple human kindness. The cafe continued its morning bustle around them, but in that small corner, time seemed to have stopped. Thank you, Mr. Richard finally whispered, for seeing me, for caring for me, for reminding me that I'm still human. I'm always going to take care of you, Rose promised. And at that moment, unknowingly, she sealed a destiny that would change her life forever. When Mr. Richard finally got up to leave an hour later, he left a $50 bill under his cup for a breakfast that cost $5. As always. And as always, Rose tried to return it. Mr. Richard, this is too much. It's never enough for the kindness you give me, he replied, putting on his hat. Until tomorrow, Rose. Until tomorrow, Rose responded, not knowing that the next few times she saw him, her world would have completely changed. As she watched him walk away down the street, Mr. Henderson approached her. "That man is in love with you, Rose." "No." Rose shook her head. "He's lonely. It's different." "Maybe," Henderson murmured. "Or maybe it's both." Rose put the bill in her apron, as she always did. That extra money meant Lucy could have new school supplies. It meant she could pay this month's rent on time. It meant she could buy medicine for her daughter's cough. She didn't know that Mr. Richard left those excessive tips deliberately, hoping she would use them. She didn't know that he came early every day just to make sure she was okay before facing his own empty day. And she definitely didn't know that in less than 48 hours, men in dark suits with bodyguards would walk through that same door looking for her, looking for the waitress who had saved the life of one of the richest men in the city without even knowing it. 2 days after the anniversary of his wife's death, Mr. Richard arrived at the Daily Grind Cafe at 7 o'clock sharp, as always. But something was different. Rose noticed it immediately. He had deep circles under his eyes, as if he hadn't slept in days. His suit, though impeccable as ever, seemed to hang heavier on his shoulders. And when he removed his hat, Rose saw that his hands trembled more than usual. "Good morning, Mr. Richard," she greeted, trying to keep her voice cheerful, but unable to hide her concern. "Are you all right?" "Good morning, Rose," he replied, slowly sitting at his corner booth. "Just a bad night, nothing to worry about." But Rose worried. It was her nature. As she prepared his coffee and toast, she felt her phone vibrate in her apron pocket. She ignored it. She was working, but when it vibrated a third time in less than a minute, she knew something was wrong. "Excuse me a moment," she told Mr. Richard, walking away towards the kitchen. The message was from Lucy's school. "Mrs. Miller, your daughter has a high fever. You need to pick her up immediately." Panic seized Rose. Lucy had been coughing for days, but Rose had thought it was just a cold. She didn't have money to take her to the doctor, so she had been treating her with home remedies and cheap drugstore medicines. "What's wrong?" Mr. Henderson's voice interrupted her thoughts. "It's Lucy. She's sick. I have to go get her." "Go," Henderson said immediately. "I'll handle things here." But Mr. Richard rose. Henderson placed a firm hand on her shoulder. "Your daughter needs you. Go." Rose nodded, quickly untying her apron. But before leaving, she couldn't help but approach Mr. Richard's table. "Mr. Richard, I'm so sorry. I have to leave." "It's my daughter." "Go," he said. And in his eyes, there was deep understanding. Family always comes first. "Thank you," Rose whispered and ran for the door. What she didn't see was how Mr. Richard watched her leave with an expression of deep concern, nor how, after a moment, he got up and signaled to Mr. Henderson. "Which school does her daughter attend?" he asked quietly. Henderson looked at him suspiciously, but there was something in Mr. Richard's expression that made him answer. "Lincoln Elementary School." "Why?" "Mr." Richard didn't reply. He simply left a $100 bill on the table and left the cafe. Rose arrived at the school, panting after running the 6 blocks from the cafe. She had no money for a taxi. In the nurse's office, she found Lucy lying on a narrow cot, with cheeks flushed with fever and glassy eyes. "Mommy," the child whimpered at the sight of her. "I'm here, my love." Rose knelt beside her, touching her burning forehead. "I'm here, Mrs. Miller." The school nurse approached with a serious expression. "Your daughter has a fever of 102 degrees. She needs to see a doctor immediately." "I know," Rose murmured, feeling panic grow in her chest. "I know. Do you have health insurance?" Rose shook her head. She couldn't afford insurance. She barely made rent. "The nearest public hospital is 20 minutes by taxi, or you can take her to the free clinic. But the waiting list is 4 hours." 4 hours. Rose looked at her daughter, who coughed weakly, and made a decision. She would use the money she had been saving for this month's rent. Lucy's health was more important. "I'll take a taxi to the hospital," she said, lifting Lucy into her arms. "Mummy," Lucy whispered against her shoulder. "We're going to be okay. Always," Rose promised, though she wasn't sure how she would keep that promise. "We're always going to be okay." She walked out of school with Lucy in her arms, scanning for a taxi. But it was rush hour, and they all passed by, occupied. After 5 minutes under the scorching sun, with Lucy growing heavier in her arms, Rose felt tears begin to form. "Please," she whispered to the sky. "Please, help me." At that moment, a sleek black car pulled up in front of her. The back window slowly rolled down, revealing Mr. Richard's familiar face. "Get in," Mr. Richard said simply. I can't, Rose. He interrupted, and his voice admitted no arguments. Your daughter is sick. There's no time for pride. Get in the car. I'll take you to the hospital. Rose hesitated only a second before Lucy coughed again. A strong, heartbreaking cough. She got in the car. The interior was luxurious, with soft leather seats and cool air conditioning. A uniformed chauffeur was driving, and Rose realized Mr. Richard had been waiting outside the school all this time. How did you know where to find me? She asked as she settled Lucy on her lap. I asked Mr. Henderson. Mr. Richard replied, looking at the child with genuine concern. How long has she been sick? 5 days, Rose admitted. I thought it was just a cold. But why didn't you take her to the doctor sooner? Rose looked down, ashamed. I don't have. Doctors are expensive. Mr. Richard said nothing for a moment. Then he leaned forward and spoke to the chauffeur. Take us to St. Mary's Hospital. It's private, Mr. Richard. No, Rose protested immediately. I can't afford a private hospital. The public hospital, Rose. He interrupted her gently but firmly. Your daughter needs immediate medical attention. St. Mary's Hospital is the best in the city, and I will take care of the expenses. I can't accept that. It's too much. Can you accept your daughter suffering when there's a solution? Mr. Richard asked, and there was no judgment in his voice, only an honest question. Rose looked at Lucy, who was breathing with difficulty, and felt something break inside her. I don't know how to repay you, she whispered. You don't need to repay me anything. Mr. Richard replied, for 3 years you have given me something money cannot buy. Dignity, companionship, kindness. This is the least I can do. The drive to St. Mary's Hospital took 15 minutes. When they arrived, Mr. Richard got out first and spoke briefly to someone at the reception. By the time Rose entered with Lucy in her arms, a nurse was already waiting with a wheelchair. Mrs. Miller, the nurse said efficiently, taking Lucy from her arms with professional care. Dr. Evans is waiting for her. He's our best pediatrician. Everything happened so fast. Lucy was taken to a private examination room, where a young doctor with a kind expression thoroughly checked her. They took her temperature, listened to her lungs, took blood samples. Rose watched everything from a corner, feeling fear squeeze her throat. Mr. Richard stood beside her, a silent but comforting presence. It's pneumonia, Dr. Evans finally announced. It's not severe yet, but she needs antibiotics immediately. If you had waited one more day. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Rose felt her knees weaken. Pneumonia. Her baby had pneumonia, and she had thought it was just a cold. Does she need to be admitted? Mr. Richard asked when Rose couldn't find her voice. No, if she starts treatment today, the doctor replied. But she will need medication, complete rest for a week, and follow-up medical care every 2 days. Do whatever is necessary, Mr. Richard said, and put it on my account, doctor. The doctor blinked, as if only now realizing who was standing in front of him. His expression changed to one of surprise and respect. Mr. Sterling, I didn't know you were here. Keep this discreet, please, Mr. Richard said softly. This child is my responsibility. I want her to receive the best possible care. Of course, sir. Immediately. When the doctor left to prepare the prescription, Rose finally found her voice. Why are you doing this for us? She whispered. You barely know us. Mr. Richard looked at her with an expression Rose couldn't quite decipher. There was sadness there. And also something else. A decision made. A renewed purpose. Rose, he said slowly, for 3 years, you have been the only person in my life who has treated me like a human being. The only person who has seen beyond the surface and genuinely cared about me. But this is different. This is too much. Mr. Richard smiled sadly. My wife and I could never have children. It was the only regret of our marriage. She always said that if we ever had the opportunity to help a child, we should take it. That would be our way of being parents. Rose felt tears rolling down her cheeks. When I see Lucy, when I see you struggling alone to give her a good life, I see the possibility of doing something meaningful with the time I have left. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything. Mr. Richard took her hand in his, wrinkled but firm. Just let me do this. Let me take care of you and Lucy, as you have taken care of me. At that moment, Lucy coughed softly from the cot. Rose rushed to her, taking her small hand. Mommy, Lucy murmured. Who is that man? He's a friend, Rose replied, looking at Mr. Richard with infinite gratitude. A very good friend. He looks like a grandpa, Lucy said with the direct honesty of a child. Can I call him Grandpa? Mr. Richard approached the cot, and Rose saw his eyes fill with tears that didn't fall. I would love that, he said with a voice thick with emotion. The next 2 hours passed in a blur. Antibiotics were administered, prescriptions were prepared, and Lucy began to breathe more easily. Rose never left her side, but she was aware that Mr. Richard hadn't left either. When they finally received the discharge with detailed care instructions, Rose tried to see how much the bill would be, but the doctor simply smiled and said, "It's all paid." In the car ride back home, Lucy had fallen asleep against Rose's shoulder. Mr. Richard looked out the window, lost in his thoughts. Mr. Richard, Rose finally said, I don't know how to thank you. Come to the cafe tomorrow, he replied without turning around. As always, that will be all the thanks I need. When they arrived at the modest apartment building where Rose lived, Mr. Richard insisted on helping her carry Lucy upstairs. The building was old, with peeling paint and creaking stairs, but it was clean. Rose had always made sure of that. Her apartment was small, 1 bedroom, a tiny kitchen, a shared bathroom, but there were flowers in the window, Lucy's drawings on the walls, and a love that filled every corner. Mr. Richard looked around with an expression Rose couldn't interpret. It was sadness, admiration, determination. You've built a beautiful home here, he finally said. We do what we can. Rose responded, laying Lucy on the apartment's only bed. She would sleep on the sofa tonight, as she often did. When Mr. Richard was about to leave, he stopped at the door. Rose, tomorrow I need to talk to you about something important, something I've been considering. What is it? Tomorrow, he repeated, at the cafe, at the usual time. After he left, Rose sat beside Lucy, watching her now steady breathing, and cried. She cried from relief, from gratitude, from accumulated exhaustion. And somewhere in the city, in an empty mansion that no longer felt like a home, Mr. Richard Sterling was on the phone with his attorney. Martinez, he said in a firm voice, I need you to prepare some documents. Tomorrow night I will tell you exactly what I need, but be ready. There are going to be significant changes. What kind of changes, Mr. Sterling? The kind my wife would have wanted me to make years ago. What neither of them knew was that in less than 24 hours, everything would change. That a simple conversation in a cafe would lead to a revelation that would leave Rose speechless. That kindness has a way of multiplying in ways no one can predict. And that sometimes, families are not born, they are chosen. Rose arrived at the Daily Grind Cafe at 6:30 the next morning, half an hour earlier than usual. She hadn't slept well. The image of Mr. Richard paying the hospital bill, the way he had said they needed to talk about something important, all swirled in her mind. Lucy had stayed home with the upstairs neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, who had insisted on caring for her without charge. Neighbors take care of each other, she had said. As she brewed the coffee, Rose couldn't stop thinking about the doctor's words. Mr. Sterling, as if he knew that name, as if it meant something. At 2 o'clock, Mr. Richard entered the cafe, but today he wasn't alone. Behind him walked 2 tall men dressed in impeccable dark suits, the kind Rose had only seen in movies. They had earpieces and a posture that screamed security, and behind them, an older man with a leather briefcase, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than everything Rose would earn in a year. The Daily Grind, normally bustling at that hour, fell completely silent. Good morning, Rose, Mr. Richard said, but his voice sounded different, more formal, more distant. Mr. Richard? Rose whispered, looking at the men behind him. What's happening? Can we sit down? There's something I need to tell you, Mr. Henderson approached, eyes wide. Mr. Richard, is everything all right? Everything is fine, Henderson, one of the security men said in a professional voice. We just need some privacy for a few minutes. Wait. Henderson looked at the bodyguards, then at Mr. Richard, and something clicked in his head. My God, you are Richard Sterling, the Richard Sterling. Rose looked between Henderson and Mr. Richard, confused. What does that mean? Rose, Mr. Richard slowly removed his hat. Please, sit. She sat, feeling her legs tremble. The bodyguards positioned themselves near the doors. The man with the briefcase sat next to Mr. Richard. Rose Miller. The man with the briefcase spoke in a formal voice. My name is David Martinez. I am Mr. Richard Sterling's personal attorney. I don't understand, Rose murmured. Mr. Richard took a deep breath. For 3 years I have come to this cafe as an ordinary man, a lonely old man seeking a moment of peace, and that is what I am in essence. But there is something I haven't told you. I own Sterling Industries, the largest construction and real estate company in the country. Rose blinked. Sterling Industries. She had seen that name on buildings all over the city, in advertisements, in the news. "Wait," she said slowly. "That means you are one of the richest men in the country," Mr. Richard completed. "Yes." Rose's world began to spin. "Why? Why didn't you tell me?" "Because when I met you, I was tired of people seeing me as a walking ATM. My wife had died. My children wouldn't speak to me because they only wanted my money. My friends disappeared when I was no longer useful to them." His eyes filled with tears. "But you saw me the man, not the money. For 3 years I was just Richard to you, just an old man who needed coffee and company." "I don't understand why you're telling me this now," Rose whispered. "Because yesterday, when I saw how you lived, when I saw your daughter sick and saw you struggling alone, I realized something. My wife always said that the purpose of money is not to accumulate it, but to use it to make a difference." Attorney Martinez opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. "Miss Miller," he said formally, "Mr. Sterling has instructed me to inform you that he has made significant changes to his will." "Will?" Rose felt like she couldn't breathe. "I am 82 years old," Mr. Richard said softly. "I am not eternal, and I have spent the last 3 years thinking about what I will leave behind when I am gone." "Mr. Richard, I don't want your money." "I know," he interrupted. "That's why I want to give it to you." Attorney Martinez placed documents on the table. "Mr. Sterling has established an irrevocable trust in your name, Miss Miller. $50 million. Rose felt the entire cafe spin. "What?" "Additionally," Martinez continued, "Mr. Sterling has purchased an apartment in your name, 3 bedrooms in a safe building with a good school nearby for Lucy. It is fully paid, no mortgage." "No." Rose stood up abruptly. "No, I can't accept this. It's too much." "It's Rose. Sit down," Mr. Richard said firmly. She sat down more from shock than obedience. "For 3 years you have given me something invaluable. Dignity, respect, genuine love, expecting nothing in return. Do you know how many people in my life can say the same? None. Only you. But your family. My children haven't called me in 2 years, except to ask for money. My grandchildren know my name. My family are the lawyers and accountants who manage my fortune." His voice broke. "Yesterday, when I took Lucy to the hospital, I felt something I hadn't felt since my wife died. Purpose. I felt that my life could still mean something." "Mr. Sterling, there's more," Martinez interrupted. "Mr. Sterling has also established a full educational fund for Lucy, including college, master's, doctorate if she wishes, all paid. And," Mr. Richard added, "I want to offer you a job, not as a waitress, but as the director of the new foundation I am creating, the Sterling Hope Foundation, an organization that will help single mothers and their children." Rose couldn't speak, couldn't think. "The salary is $20,000 a month with full health insurance for you and Lucy. But more importantly than that, you will have the power to change lives, just as you changed mine." "Why?" Rose finally managed to ask. "Why, Mr. Richard took her hands in his. "Because when the world turned its back on me, you saw me. Because when I was lonely, you made me feel human. Because you taught me that kindness still exists in this world." "Miss Miller," Martinez spoke, "I need you to understand something. These documents are legal and binding. Mr. Sterling is of sound mind. I have medical certificates to prove it. This is not a whim. It is a decision pondered over for 3 years." "But your children," Rose protested weakly. "My children will receive their inheritance," Mr. Richard said firmly. "But they don't need all my money. They've been living off trusts for years. You, Rose, need this, and more importantly, you deserve it." One of the bodyguards discreetly approached and whispered something to Mr. Richard. He nodded. "Rose, I need you to sign these papers accepting the trust. You don't have to make the job decision now, but the money, the apartment, Lucy's education, that's already done. I just need your signature to make it official." "I can't," Rose whispered, tears running down her cheeks. "It's too much. Listen to me." Mr. Richard leaned forward. "I am 82 years old. I have built an empire worth billions. And of all that, the only thing that has brought me true happiness in the last 3 years has been your coffee every morning and your genuine smile. My doctor gave me 6 months," he added, and Rose felt as if a knife had been plunged into her heart. "Pancreatic cancer, no cure." "What?" Rose sobbed. "That's why I'm doing this now, because I don't have much time left, and I want to make sure the money I've accumulated does some good. I want it to help someone who will genuinely use it to make the world better. Yesterday," he continued, "when I saw Lucy sick, when I saw your small apartment filled with love, When I saw how you struggled alone, I saw what my wife would have wanted me to do. She always said, "Richard, money is just paper. What matters is what you do with it." So, do it, Rose. Accept this gift. Not for you. If that makes it easier, do it for Lucy. Do it for all the other single mothers you will help through the foundation. Do it because the world needs more people like you who have the resources to make a difference. Rose looked at the documents on the table. She looked at Mr. Richard, who watched her with pleading eyes. She looked at Attorney Martinez, who waited patiently. "If I accept this," she finally said, "I want one condition." "What, Rose?" Mr. Richard asked. "That you allow me to take care of you during these 6 months you have left. That you don't spend them alone, Mr." Richard closed his eyes, and silent tears rolled down his cheeks. "Would you do that? For 3 years you have been my friend, my only real friend. I'm not going to leave you alone now, Mr." Richard leaned forward and hugged Rose, sobbing against her shoulder. The bodyguards discreetly looked away. Attorney Martinez wiped his eyes with a handkerchief, and in the Daily Grind cafe, as the morning sun streamed through the windows, 2 lonely souls found in each other what they had been searching for all their lives. "Family, sign the papers, Rose," Mr. Richard murmured, "and let me spend my last months knowing I did something good." With trembling hands, Rose took the pen Martinez offered and signed. In that moment, her life changed forever. But what she didn't know was that the real challenges were just beginning, because Mr. Richard's family was not going to let his fortune go without a fight, and the battle ahead would make everything before seem simple. 2 days after signing the papers, Rose was in her apartment packing her few belongings when she heard loud knocking on the door. It wasn't a normal knock. It was aggressive, demanding. Mommy, Lucy, who had improved remarkably with antibiotics, looked at her with frightened eyes from the bed. "Stay here, my love," Rose said, cautiously approaching the door. "Who is it?" "Open the door, Miss Miller. We are the Sterling family." Rose's stomach sank. She slowly opened the door and found herself face to face with a woman of about 50, elegantly dressed in a designer suit that screamed money. Her hair was perfectly styled, her nails impeccable, but her eyes were cold as ice. Behind her was a man of similar age, in an expensive suit, and an expression of absolute contempt. "Rose Miller?" the woman asked in a sharp voice. "Yes, that's me. I am Victoria Sterling Moreno, Richard Sterling's daughter, and this is my brother, Edward Sterling." Rose felt fear crawl up her spine. How did you find me?" "Oh, please," Victoria laughed humorlessly. "We have resources. Can we come in, or do you prefer we have this conversation in the hallway where all your neighbors can listen?" Rose stepped aside, allowing them to enter. Victoria looked around the small apartment with barely concealed disgust. "So this is the kind of place where the woman who is stealing my father's fortune lives." "I'm not stealing anything," Rose said, trying to keep her voice firm. "Your father offered me. My father is senile." Edward interrupted abruptly. "He's 82 years old. He's dying, and he's clearly not in his right mind to make financial decisions." "That's not true. Attorney Martinez said there are medical certificates. Certificates that we can challenge." Victoria approached, invading Rose's personal space. "Listen carefully, young lady. I don't know what kind of games you've been playing with my father, but it's not going to work." "Games?" Rose felt indignation replace fear. "I was just kind to a lonely man who came to my cafe." "Kind?" Edward made air quotes with his fingers. "That's an interesting word to describe calculated manipulation. I didn't manipulate anyone." "Oh, no?" Victoria pulled out her phone and showed photos. Photos of Rose serving coffee to Mr. Richard. Photos of them talking. Photos from the day at the hospital with Lucy. "We've been investigating, Miss Miller. Single mother, poor, desperate for money. My father is rich and vulnerable. The numbers add up pretty well, don't you think?" "It's not like that," Rose whispered, feeling tears of frustration. "I didn't know who he was until 2 days ago." "Of course not." Edward laughed cynically. "A waitress who coincidentally becomes best friends with the richest man in the city without knowing who he is. You really expect us to believe that? It's the truth." "The truth?" Victoria put her phone away. "Is that we are going to challenge that will. We are going to prove that our father was not in the mental capacity to make that decision. And when we win, you will not only lose everything he gave you, but we will sue you for elder manipulation. It could put you in prison." Edward added with malicious satisfaction. Rose felt her knees tremble. "Prison." Lucy would be left alone. "Please," Rose whispered. "I didn't do anything wrong. Your father was lonely, and I just..." Just what? Victoria stepped closer. Just decided to take advantage of a sick, lonely old man. Just saw an opportunity to get rich and took it. At that moment, Lucy walked out of the room, still in her pajamas. "Mommy, who are these people? Why are they yelling at you?" Victoria looked at Lucy with contempt. "Ah, the sick child. How convenient that she got sick just when my father was considering changing his will. Leave her alone." Rose stepped between Victoria and Lucy. "She has nothing to do with this." "Oh, but she does," Edward said. "This is all for her, isn't it? A desperate mother willing to do anything for her daughter. It's almost Shakespearean." "Get out of my house," Rose said, her voice trembling but firm. "Gladly." Victoria turned to the door. "But this doesn't end here. Enjoy your money while you can, Miss Miller. Because when we're done with you, you'll have nothing. Not a dime. Not even your freedom." When they left, Rose collapsed onto the sofa, trembling. Lucy ran to her. "Mommy, what's wrong?" "Who were they?" "No one, my love." Rose hugged her tightly. "No one important." But she knew it was a lie. Her phone rang. It was Mr. Richard. "Rose, are you okay?" "Victoria and Edward just left my house furious. They told me they went to see you." "I'm fine." Rose lied. "No, you're not okay. I can hear it in your voice." "I'm coming over." "Mr. Richard, you don't need to. I'm already in the car." 20 minutes later, Mr. Richard arrived with Attorney Martinez. Lucy had fallen asleep again, exhausted by the medication and the day's emotions. "Tell me exactly what they said," Mr. Richard ordered, sitting on the small sofa. Rose told him everything. The accusations, the threats, the promise to challenge the will. Mr. Richard was furious in a way Rose had never seen. His hands trembled, not from weakness, but from contained rage. "Martinez," he said in an icy voice, "I want you to prepare a lawsuit for harassment and intimidation against my children today." "Mr. Sterling," Martinez said carefully, "that will only escalate the situation." "I don't care, Mr. Richard slapped the arm of the sofa. "I will not allow them to torment Rose. She did nothing wrong." "Mr. Richard," Rose said softly, "maybe they're right. Maybe this is too much. Maybe I should give the money back." "And no," he interrupted firmly. "You are not going to do that. But they're going to challenge the will. They're going to say, you weren't in your right mind. Let me explain something about my children." "Mr. Richard said with a voice full of bitterness. "Victoria married a businessman who bankrupted his business. Edward lost millions in stupid investments. Both of them have been living off trusts I set up for them, waiting for me to die so they could take full control of the fortune. When I told them I had changed my will, they didn't ask why. They didn't ask who you were. They only asked how much money they would lose. That is their only concern. Money. Not me. Not my happiness. The damn money." "But they're your family," Rose whispered. "No." Mr. Richard took her hands. "You are my family, you and Lucy. You have given me more genuine love in 3 years than they gave me in their entire lives." "Mr. Sterling," Martinez interrupted, "I need to inform you that Victoria and Edward are preparing a legal petition to declare you incompetent. They have a hearing scheduled for next week." "Can they do that?" Rose asked, panic growing in her voice. "They can try," Martinez replied, "but we have all the necessary medical certificates. Mr. Sterling is completely lucid and capable of making his own decisions." "Then we will fight," Mr. Richard said, "and we will win." "Mr. Richard," Rose said, tears streaming down her cheeks, "I don't want to be the reason your family hates you more. I don't want to. My family already hated me." He interrupted softly. "Because I never gave them unlimited access to my money. Because I put conditions on their trusts. Because I refused to be an ATM for their excessive lifestyles. Do you know when the last time Victoria called me without asking for money was? 12 years ago. Edward? Never. Not once in his adult life has he called me just to ask how I am." His voice broke. "But you, Rose, you asked me how I was every morning and truly wanted to know the answer. That is worth more." At that moment, Lucy walked out of the room, rubbing her eyes. "Grandpa Richard," Mr. Richard's face lit up. "Hello, Princess. How are you feeling?" "Better." Lucy snuggled next to him on the sofa. "Why are you sad?" "I'm not sad, honey. Just worried about the bad people who came." Mr. Richard looked at Rose in surprise. "You heard everything?" "Just a little bit," Lucy admitted. "But Mommy says when people are bad, it's because they're sad inside." "Your mommy is very wise, Grandpa Richard," Lucy said with a child's seriousness. "Those people are your family. By blood, yes, but not by heart. Mommy says real family isn't the one you're born with, but the one who chooses to stay with you." We are your real family. Mr. Richard hugged Lucy tightly, tears rolling down his cheeks. Yes, princess. You are my true family. So, you don't have to be sad, because we're not going anywhere. Martinez wiped his eyes with a handkerchief. Miss Miller, I need you to prepare testimony for the hearing. They will ask you about your relationship with Mr. Richard, about how it all started, about your intentions. I'm going to tell the truth, Rose said firmly, that I knew a kind man who needed company, and I gave it to him. Nothing more, nothing less. That is exactly the right answer. That night, after Mr. Richard and Martinez left, Rose stayed awake watching Lucy sleep. Her daughter had a future now, guaranteed education, assured health, opportunities Rose could never have given her alone. Was it worth fighting for? Was it worth facing Victoria and Edward in court? She looked at the antibiotic bottle on the nightstand, medicines Mr. Richard had paid for, medicines that had saved her daughter's life. Yes, it was worth fighting for Lucy, for Mr. Richard, and for all who would come after, those who would be helped by the Sterling Hope Foundation. The battle was just beginning, but Rose Miller was not one to give up easily. The courtroom was cold. Rose had never been in court before, and the formal atmosphere made her feel small and insignificant. She wore her best dress, one she had bought at a thrift store years ago, and felt Victoria and Edward's eyes fixed on her from across the room. Mr. Richard sat beside her, with Attorney Martinez to his right. Lucy had stayed with Mrs. Rodriguez, but Rose could feel the weight of her daughter in her heart. This was all for her. All rise, the bailiff announced. This court is now in session. Presiding the Honorable Judge Robert Hayes, an older man of about 60, entered and sat behind the bench. He had gray hair, a serious expression, and eyes that seemed to see beyond words. We are here, the judge began, to hear the petition of Victoria Sterling Moreno and Edward Sterling to declare their father, Richard Sterling, incompetent to manage his financial and personal affairs. Is the petitioner's side ready? The attorney for Victoria and Edward, a thin man in an expensive suit, stood up. Yes, Your Honor. We will present evidence that Mr. Richard Sterling, 82 years old and with a terminal cancer diagnosis, has been manipulated by Rose Miller to change his will so that she receives a significant portion of his fortune. Rose felt nauseous. Is the defense ready? The judge asked. Martinez stood up. Yes, Your Honor. We will demonstrate that Mr. Sterling is of sound mind and that his decisions are entirely voluntary and well considered. Proceed with the petition. The judge ordered. Victoria and Edward's attorney called their first witness, a private psychiatrist. Dr. Thompson, the attorney began. You evaluated Mr. Sterling 6 months ago. Correct. Correct. And what were your conclusions? I found signs of severe depression, social isolation, and early cognitive decline consistent with his advanced age. Rose felt Mr. Richard tense beside her. Cognitive decline, the attorney repeated with emphasis. Could that decline affect his ability to make important financial decisions? Potentially, yes, especially if he were being influenced by someone close to him. Objection. Martinez stood up. Speculation. Sustained, the judge said. But the damage was done. The attorney had planted the seed of doubt. The next witness was Victoria. She took the stand with perfect composure, in her designer suit and her practiced victim expression. Mrs. Moreno, her attorney began. Describe the relationship you had with your father before Miss Miller appeared in his life. We were very close, Victoria said, and her voice sounded rehearsed. I visited him regularly. I worried about his well-being, especially after my mother died. Rose felt rage boiling. Lies. It was all lies. And what changed when he met Miss Miller? My father began to distance himself. He stopped answering my calls. When I finally managed to speak to him, he was different, confused, obsessed with this woman he barely knew. Did you try to warn him about the situation? Of course. I told him to be careful, that he didn't know this woman's true intentions, but he refused to listen. He was clearly being manipulated. Martinez stood up for cross-examination. Mrs. Moreno, when was the last time you visited your father before this legal process? Victoria hesitated. I'm not sure of the exact date. Was it a month ago? 6 months? A year? Approximately 8 months. 8 months, Martinez repeated. And in those 8 months, how many times did you call your father just to ask how he was, without asking for money? I don't keep track of 0 times, Martinez stated. Isn't it true that the last time you spoke to him was to ask him for $50,000 to pay your husband's debts? Victoria flushed. That was a temporary investment. An investment that was never repaid. Objection. Victoria's attorney jumped up. Irrelevant. It goes to the witness's credibility, Your Honor, Martinez argued. The objection is denied. Continue, the judge said. Edward was the next witness, and his interrogation was similar. Martinez systematically exposed how both siblings had been living off trusts, how they had repeatedly asked for money, how neither had shown genuine interest in their father's well-being. Then, it was the defense's turn. I call Richard Sterling to the stand, Martinez announced. Mr. Richard slowly stood up, walked to the stand, and took the oath. Under the harsh courtroom light, he looked older, more fragile, but his eyes were clear and determined. Mr. Sterling, Martinez began, are you on any medication that could affect your judgment? Only pain medication that I take as needed, but my mind is completely clear. Why did you decide to change your will to include Rose Miller? Mr. Richard took a deep breath. For 3 years, Rose was the only person in my life who treated me like a human being instead of a checkbook. When my wife died, I fell into a deep depression. My children weren't there. His voice broke slightly. But Rose, yes. Every morning without fail, she greeted me with a genuine smile. She asked me how I was, and truly wanted to know the answer. She made me feel that my life still had value. Did she know who you were, your wealth? No, not until 2 weeks ago. And when I finally told her, her first reaction wasn't excitement or greed, it was concern for me. She asked me why I hadn't told her sooner, if I was okay, if I was being treated properly. Why did you decide to give her a portion of your fortune? Because I want my money to do good in the world. Rose will create the Sterling Hope Foundation, which will help hundreds of single mothers like her. My money, which has been sitting in bank accounts, will finally have a real purpose. Victoria's attorney stood up for cross-examination. Mr. Sterling, isn't it true that your judgment may be clouded by loneliness? That you see in Miss Miller the daughter you never had? I see in Rose a woman of integrity, compassion, and strength, qualities I wish my own children possessed. Victoria gasped from her seat. It's not possible that you are projecting your emotional desires onto this situation. I am not projecting anything. I am making a conscious decision about how I want my fortune to be used when I die. That is my right. But your biological children... My biological children, Mr. Richard interrupted with an icy voice, have received millions from me throughout their lives. They have trusts that ensure them a comfortable lifestyle. What I am not giving them is total control over my fortune to squander it as they have squandered everything else. The attorney sat down, clearly out of effective questions. I call Rose Miller to the stand, Martinez announced. Rose's legs trembled as she walked to the stand. She swore to tell the truth and sat down, trying to control her breathing. Miss Miller, Martinez began gently. Tell the court how you met Mr. Sterling. Rose told the story. The first day he walked into the cafe, how he came every day after, how they developed a quiet friendship based on mutual respect. Did you know he was rich? No, to me he was just Mr. Richard, an elderly gentleman who enjoyed his black coffee and toast without jam. When you learned of his true identity 2 weeks ago, when he arrived with his lawyers and bodyguards at the cafe, what was your reaction? Shock. I couldn't believe it. And then fear because I didn't understand why he was telling me all that. Why did you accept his offer? Rose thought carefully. At first I didn't want to. It seemed like too much. But Mr. Richard made me see that it wasn't just about me, it was about Lucy, about all the other families we could help through the foundation. And because he told me he only had 6 months left to live and wanted to spend that time knowing his money would do good. Did you ever manipulate Mr. Sterling? No, never. I was just kind to a man who was lonely. Victoria's attorney stood up for cross-examination with a shark-like expression. Miss Miller, you are a poor woman, correct? I don't have much money, if that's what you're asking. A single mother struggling to survive, desperate to give her daughter a better life. I want the best for my daughter. Yes, any mother does. Isn't it true that when you saw a rich and vulnerable man, you saw an opportunity? No, Rose said firmly. When I saw Mr. Richard, I saw a human being who needed company. A very rich human being. I didn't know that until later. You really expect us to believe that you never suspected he was someone important? A man who arrived in a chauffeured car, who left $50 tips for a $5 breakfast. I thought he was generous. I never asked where the money came from. Or perhaps you researched who he was and developed a strategy to approach him. Objection. Martinez stood up. There's no evidence of that, Your Honor, the attorney argued. The situation speaks for itself. A poor woman coincidentally becomes friends with the richest man in the city. The objection is sustained. The judge said, "Counselor, you need evidence, not speculation. I have no further questions." The attorney sat down, clearly frustrated. Martinez stood up for re-examination. "Miss Miller, what will you do with the money if this court rules in your favor?" "I will create the Sterling Hope Foundation, as Mr. Richard wishes. I will help single mothers who are in the position I was in, working hard, but unable to get ahead. I will give them the opportunity Mr. Richard gave me. And the apartment? I will give Lucy a safe home where she can grow up without worries." "Nothing for yourself?" Rose thought about that. "For me, the greatest gift is not the money. It's knowing that Lucy will be okay, that she will have an education, health, opportunities, that she won't have to struggle like I struggled. That is the real gift." There was silence in the room. "One last witness," Martinez announced. "I called Dr. Evans." The pediatrician who had treated Lucy entered and took the oath. "Dr. Evans," Martinez began, "you treated Lucy Miller 2 weeks ago, correct?" "Correct. Pneumonia." "And who brought the child to the hospital?" "Mr. Richard Sterling and Miss Miller." "Did you observe the interaction between Mr. Richard and the family?" "Yes." "Mr. Richard was genuinely concerned about the child. It was not the concern of someone looking for gain, it was the concern of a grandfather for his granddaughter. Did he appear to be under influence or manipulation? Quite the opposite. He seemed more alert and focused than many patients his age. He made informed medical decisions. He asked intelligent questions about the treatment. There was no sign of cognitive decline. The testimonies ended. The judge asked for final arguments. Victoria's attorney argued that Mr. Richard was being emotionally manipulated by Rose, that his loneliness had made him vulnerable. Martinez argued that Mr. Richard had the fundamental right to decide what to do with his fortune, that his children had shown interest only in money, not in his well-being. "I will take a 2-hour recess to deliberate," the judge announced. Those 2 hours were the longest of Rose's life. She sat on a bench outside the courtroom with Mr. Richard beside her. "Whatever happens, Mr. Richard said softly, I want you to know that these last 3 years, thanks to you, have been the best of my life." "Mr. Richard." "No." He took her hand. "Let me say it. You gave me something I didn't know I needed, a reason to live beyond accumulating money. You reminded me that kindness still exists, and that is priceless." When the judge finally returned, the room was in absolute silence. "I have reviewed all the evidence," he began. "The medical certificates, the testimonies, the financial records, and I have come to a conclusion." Rose felt her heart stop. Richard Sterling is clearly of sound mind. His decision to modify his will is completely valid and legal. "The petition to declare him incompetent is denied," Victoria screamed. Edward pounded the table, but the judge continued. "Furthermore, I find that the petitioners have shown more concern for money than for their father's well-being, and that, frankly, is deplorable." He turned to Rose. "Miss Miller, I see no evidence of manipulation. I see a hard-working woman who showed kindness to a lonely man, and I see a man who wants to ensure his fortune does good in the world." Case closed. Rose felt tears of relief running down her cheeks. Mr. Richard hugged her tightly. They had won. But when they left the courthouse, Victoria was waiting outside. "This doesn't end here," she spat with venom in her voice. "We'll find another way to get back what's ours." Mr. Richard stopped, turned, and looked at his daughter with an expression Rose had never seen. Pure disappointment. "The only thing that was yours," he said with a calm but lethal voice, "was my love, and you lost that years ago." And he walked away, leaving Victoria with tears of rage in her eyes. 3 months after the trial, the Sterling Hope Foundation opened its doors in a modest but dignified building in the center of the city. Rose had spent those months working 18 hours a day, learning about foundation management, hiring staff, establishing protocols. Mr. Richard had insisted on being present every step of the way, though his health visibly deteriorated. He had lost weight, his hands trembled more, and some days the pain was so intense he could barely get out of bed. But in his eyes, there was something Rose had never seen before. Peace. "I'm leaving something good behind," he had told her one night as they reviewed applications for help in Rose's new apartment. "That's all a man can ask for." On opening day, Rose was nervous. They had invited media, local authorities, and, most importantly, the first 10 families who would receive help from the foundation. "Breathe, Mr. Richard told her as they waited for the ceremony to begin. He was sitting in a wheelchair now, too weak to stand for long periods. "You're going to be wonderful. And if I fail? What if I can't do it right? Rose." He took her hand. You've spent your whole life helping others when you had nothing. Imagine what you'll do now that you have resources. Lucy, dressed in a new but simple dress, ran up. At 9 years old, she had blossomed in these 3 months. She no longer coughed. She had gained weight, and her smile was constant. Mommy, there are a lot of people outside waiting. I know, my love. Are you ready for your part? Lucy was going to give a short speech about how the foundation had changed her life. She had been practicing for weeks. When the doors opened, Rose was surprised by the crowd. At least 100 people filled the hall, and in the front row, to her shock, was Mr. Henderson from the Daily Grind. Wasn't going to miss this. Henderson winked at her. Rose stepped onto the small podium they had prepared. Cameras flashed. Reporters held recorders, but the only thing Rose could focus on were the 10 women sitting in the second row, each with young children by their side. 10 single mothers, 10 stories of struggle, 10 opportunities to change lives. Good morning, Rose began, her voice trembling slightly. My name is Rose Miller, and 3 months ago I was one of you. She pointed to the 10 women. I was a single mother working in a cafe, struggling to pay rent, without health insurance, watching my daughter get sick without being able to take her to the doctor. Then I met an extraordinary man who taught me something important. That kindness isn't about how much money you have, but about how much you are willing to give from your heart. She looked at Mr. Richard, who had tears in his eyes. Mr. Richard Sterling gave me an opportunity when no one else would, and now, through this foundation, we want to give that same opportunity to families like mine, like yours. She explained the foundation's programs: job assistance, health insurance, educational scholarships, temporary housing, psychological support. We are not charity, Rose emphasized. We are a helping hand. We are the opportunity everyone deserves to build a better life. When she finished, there was applause, but what mattered most to her was seeing the faces of those 10 women filled with renewed hope. Lucy went up to the podium next, and with her clear child's voice, she told her story. 3 months ago, I was very sick. My mommy didn't have money to take me to the doctor. She cried at night thinking I didn't notice, but I did notice. Rose felt a lump in her throat. Then Grandpa Richard helped us, and now I'm okay. And Mommy doesn't cry at night anymore. And I want other children to be okay too. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. After the ceremony, Rose spent hours talking individually with each of the 10 mothers. She listened to their stories, their struggles, their dreams. Maria, 32, had lost her job when her son was diagnosed with diabetes. Medical expenses had driven her to bankruptcy. Carmen, 28, had escaped an abusive relationship with her 2 daughters. She had no family, no money, and was living in a shelter. Andrea, 35, was a teacher, but earned so little that she couldn't afford rent and food at the same time. Her 3 children ate. She did not. Each story was an echo of Rose's own story, and each reinforced her determination to make the foundation work. Miss Miller, Maria said with tears in her eyes. This is real. You are really going to help us? It's real, Rose promised. And you're all going to get through this. That night, after everyone had left, Rose found Mr. Richard in his office, looking out the window at the city. What are you thinking about? She asked, sitting beside him. That my life was worth it, he replied simply. For years I wondered what the purpose of accumulating so much money was. Now I know. It was for this moment. Mr. Richard, I have to tell you something. He turned to her, and Rose noticed how much paler he looked under the dim office light. My doctor says I have maybe 2 weeks left, a month if I'm lucky. Rose felt the world stop. No. The doctor said you had 6 months. That was 3 months ago. The cancer is progressing faster than they expected. Tears began to stream down Rose's cheeks. I'm not ready to lose you. No one is ever ready. Mr. Richard took her hand. But Rose, I need you to hear something very important. That when I'm gone, Victoria and Edward will try to destroy the foundation. They will try to convince the board of directors that the money should go to them instead of to the needy families. Can they do that? They can try. That's why I need you to be strong. Stronger than you've ever been. This foundation isn't just about helping 10 families. It's about creating a legacy that will last for generations. I don't know if I can do it without you. Yes, you can, Mr. Richard smiled. Because you have something that took me 80 years to find. You know that a person's true value isn't in what they have, but in what they give. That night, Rose couldn't sleep. She stayed awake, looking at foundation documents, plans for the future, requests for help that kept coming in. 50 requests. 100, 200. Each one was a story of struggle. Each one was an opportunity to change a life. A week later, Rose was in her office when she received a call from Mr. Richard's assistant. "Miss Miller, you need to come to the hospital immediately." "Mr. Sterling had a crisis this morning." Rose dropped everything and ran. When she arrived at the hospital, she found Victoria and Edward outside Mr. Richard's room, arguing with the doctors. "We are his family," Victoria insisted. "We make the medical decisions." Mr. Sterling signed a power of attorney, giving that authority to Miss Miller. The doctor replied. Victoria turned when she saw Rose approaching. "Of course, the manipulator arrives to make sure her investment doesn't die prematurely." "Shut up," Rose said with a voice she didn't recognize as her own. "You have no right to speak about your father like that." "I have no right? You're going to tell me about my rights with my father?" "Your father," Rose said firmly, "is dying. And instead of being by his side, you're out here fighting about money. That's all you care about." "No. The money." Edward stepped closer menacingly. "Listen to me, Waitress." "No." Rose didn't back down. "You listen to me, Mr. Richard asked me to take care of him in his last days, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. You can stay if you're going to behave respectfully, or you can leave. You can't kick us out. We're his family. I am his power of attorney." Rose showed the documents. "And yes, I can." Victoria and Edward looked at each other, clearly not expecting this resistance. "This doesn't end here," Victoria hissed before walking away with Edward behind her. Rose entered the room where Mr. Richard was connected to multiple machines. He looked so small, so fragile. Lucy was sitting by his bed, holding his hand. "Grandpa Richard," Lucy whispered when Rose entered. "Mr. Richard slowly opened his eyes. "Rose, I'm here." She took his other hand. "Good. I need to tell you something. Save your energy." "No." He smiled weakly. "I don't need energy for anything else now. Listen. In my desk at home, there's an envelope. It's for you. Open it only after I'm gone." "Mr. Richard, don't talk like that." "Rose." His voice was firm despite the weakness. "I have lived a long life. I have built businesses. I have made fortunes. But the only thing that truly mattered in the end were these last 3 years with you and Lucy. That is the only thing I will take with me." "You taught us so much," Rose cried. "You taught me that I deserved more, that Lucy deserved more, and you taught me to live again, to feel again, to matter to someone again." Lucy put her head on Mr. Richard's chest. "I don't want you to go, Grandpa. I know, Princess, but I'm going to a place where I'll see your grandma again, and I'll tell her all about you, about your mommy, about the foundation. Will you tell her we took care of you?" "I'll tell her. You saved me." They spent the next 4 hours like that, the 3 of them together. Rose told him about the foundation's plans, about the families they were helping. Lucy read him stories. Mr. Richard listened, smiling weakly. As evening fell, his breathing began to slow. "Rose," he murmured, "I'm here. Thank you for everything, for seeing me, for caring for me, for giving meaning to my life. Thank you for teaching me that kindness still exists." Mr. Richard closed his eyes, a smile on his lips. And with Rose and Lucy holding him, with the sun setting over the city he had built, Richard Sterling exhaled his last breath in peace, surrounded by love, having left a legacy that would last far beyond his time. Rose cried. But even through the tears, she knew one thing for sure. The battle for his legacy was just beginning, and she would not let him down. Mr. Richard Sterling's funeral was exactly as he had requested. Simple, intimate, and full of the people who had truly loved him. Rose was surprised when more than 100 people came to the ceremony, but they weren't businessmen or executives. They were employees from the corporate building's cafeteria that Mr. Richard used to visit. They were doormen who remembered his kindness. They were the 10 families from the foundation who wanted to honor the man who had given them hope. Victoria and Edward arrived late, dressed entirely in designer black, without a real tear in their eyes. During the service, Rose gave the eulogy. She spoke about a man who had learned that true wealth is not measured in money, but in the lives you touch. She spoke about kindness, about dignity, about love that transcends blood. When she finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the room, except for Victoria and Edward's. After the funeral, Rose returned to the apartment with Lucy, emotionally exhausted. It was then that she remembered the envelope. "Mommy," Lucy said, as Rose searched for the keys to the envelope in her purse. "Do you think Grandpa Richard is happy now?" "Yes, my love. He's with his wife and watching over us from up there." She opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a handwritten letter and another smaller envelope. The letter read, "My dearest Rose, if you are reading this, it means I have finally gone. Don't be sad. These last 3 years with you and Lucy were the best of my life. There is something I never told you. When my wife was dying, she made me promise something. She made me promise that if I ever found someone with a heart as pure as hers, I would do everything I could to help her fulfill her purpose in the world. You are that person, Rose. In the small envelope you will find something that explains many things, but first I need you to understand. Everything I did, every decision I made, was because I saw in you what my wife saw in everyone. Infinite potential, waiting for the right opportunity. The foundation is just the beginning. Use the money wisely, help as many families as you can, and when Victoria and Edward try to stop you because they will remember, you have something they will never have. The genuine love of the people you help, that is the greatest fortune in the world. With all my love, Richard." Rose opened the small envelope with trembling hands. Inside was an old, yellowed photo. It was of a young woman in a waitress uniform standing in front of a cafe. On the back, in faded handwriting, it read, "Hope Sterling, 1965. My first wife, my first love. Waitress at the Sunshine Cafe." Rose felt the world stop. Mr. Richard's wife had been a waitress like her. Everything made sense now. Why had he chosen that specific cafe? Why had he connected with Rose so deeply? He was reliving the happiest moments of his life. Rose cried, hugging the photo to her chest. 2 days later, Rose received a legal summons. Victoria and Edward were suing to dissolve the foundation and claim the remaining funds. "They can't do this," Rose told Martinez in his office. "They are arguing that the foundation was established under undue influence, that your father was not in his right mind, that the funds should return to the family estate. But we already went through this. The judge ruled in our favor." That ruling was about mental competence. This is a different civil lawsuit, and this time they have a stronger argument. They are citing irregularities in how the foundation was established. What irregularities? They argue that the foundation was created too quickly, without adequate oversight, that you don't have the qualifications to direct it. Rose felt panic growing. What will happen to the families we're helping? If they win, the foundation dissolves. The funds return to the estate, and those families lose everything. "No!" Rose stood up. "I'm not going to allow that." The hearing was 3 weeks later. This time Rose arrived prepared. She had spent those weeks documenting every dollar spent, every family helped, every life changed. Victoria and Edward's attorney presented his case. Rose was an uneducated, inexperienced waitress who had somehow convinced a dying man to give her control over millions. "It's the scam of the century," the attorney declared dramatically. When it was Martinez's turn, he called witness after witness. Maria, the first mother who had received help, testified about how the foundation had given her work, health insurance, and hope when she had nothing. Carmen, who had escaped domestic abuse, told how the foundation had given her safe housing and psychological support. Andrea, the teacher, explained how she could now feed her 3 children and pay rent without having to choose between one or the other. One by one, the families told their stories. 30 testimonies, 30 lives, changed in just 3 months. When they finished, the judge looked at Victoria and Edward. "You too, have you helped anyone in your entire lives?" Neither responded. "Mess. Miller in 3 months has done more good with your father's money than you have in your entire existence." Case dismissed. Victoria erupted. "This is robbery. That money is ours. That money," the judge said firmly, "belongs to the people your father wanted to help. And if you file frivolous lawsuits in my court again, I will sanction you for abuse of the legal system. Step down." Outside the courthouse, Victoria approached Rose one last time. "You won this battle," she hissed, "but you won't win the war." "Victoria," Rose said calmly, "we're not at war. Your father gave me an opportunity to help others. That's all. If someday you want to truly know who your father was, come to the foundation. Come see the legacy he left." Victoria walked away without responding, but something in her expression had changed. Perhaps pain, perhaps regret. 5 years later, Rose was at the new headquarters of the Sterling Hope Foundation, a 3-story building that now housed offices, training classrooms, and even a free medical clinic. The foundation had grown exponentially. They no longer helped 10 families, but more than 500 each year. They had opened branches in 3 cities. They had helped more than 2,000 single mothers find work, housing, and dignity. Lucy, now 14, volunteered after school, helping other children with their homework. "Mommy." Lucy walked into Rose's office. "There's someone here who wants to talk to you." Rose looked up from the documents she was reviewing. "Who?" "She says her name is Victoria." Rose felt her heart quicken. Victoria Sterling Moreno was standing at the reception, dressed much simpler than Rose remembered, without excessive makeup, without ostentatious jewelry. "Victoria," Rose said cautiously, "what are you doing here?" "I came to see," Victoria said in a hoarse voice, "to see what you did with my father's money." Rose guided her through the building. She showed her the classrooms where mothers learned job skills. She showed her the clinic where families received free medical care. She showed her the community room where children did homework while their mothers worked. Victoria said nothing during the entire tour, just watched with an expression Rose couldn't interpret. Finally, they arrived at a wall filled with photos. Photos of every family the foundation had helped. More than 2,000 smiling faces. "This," Rose said softly, "is your father's legacy." Victoria touched one of the photos. "He always wanted to do this. My mother too, but we never listened to them. We only saw the money." Her voice broke. "I've lost everything, you know? My husband left me. Edward is bankrupt. Our trusts ran out years ago because we never learned to manage money responsibly." "Victoria!" "No." She raised a hand. "Let me finish. For 5 years I've been watching what you do. I've seen the news about the foundation. I've read about the families you help, and I realized something. My father didn't give you that money because he loved you more than us. He gave it to you because he knew you would do what he always dreamed of doing." Tears ran down her cheeks. "I came here to hate you, but I can't because you are doing exactly what my father would have wanted. Why are you telling me this now?" Victoria took a deep breath. "Why? Because I need help, not money, real help. I'm alone, jobless, purposeless. And I thought, maybe the foundation also helps people like me." Rose felt something stir in her heart. "The foundation helps anyone who genuinely wants to change their life. Even me, after everything I did to you, your father taught me that everyone deserves a second chance, even you." Victoria sobbed. And for the first time, Rose saw a broken woman who finally understood what she had lost. Not money, but love, family, purpose. "Come," Rose said, offering her hand. "I'll show you how our job training program works." 3 years later, Rose was at the Daily Grind Cafe, the same one where she had met Mr. Richard 8 years earlier. Mr. Henderson had retired, but the new owner had kept everything exactly the same. Rose sat at the corner booth, Mr. Richard's table, drinking coffee and reflecting. Lucy, now 17, had decided to study social work. She wanted to dedicate her life to helping others like her mother. The foundation now helped more than 1,000 families a year. Victoria worked as a program coordinator, having found purpose in helping other women avoid her same mistakes. The cafe door opened, and a young woman entered with a small child. They looked exhausted, desperate. The woman looked around with eyes Rose recognized, the eyes of someone searching for hope. "Excuse me." The woman timidly approached Rose. "Are you Rose Miller from the Sterling Hope Foundation?" "Yes, I am. I saw your foundation on the news. I need help. I'm a single mother. I lost my job, and my daughter is sick." Rose looked at the child, who couldn't have been more than 5 years old, and saw Lucy 8 years ago. The circle was complete. "Sit down," Rose said, pointing to the chair opposite her. "Tell me your story." As the woman spoke, Rose felt Mr. Richard's presence, as if he were sitting there with her, smiling, because this was what he had wanted, not just to help one family, but to create a legacy of kindness that would multiply infinitely. One family helping another, one life changing another, one act of kindness inspiring 1,000 more. "We're going to help you," Rose promised. "You and your daughter are going to be okay." The woman cried with relief, exactly as Rose had cried 8 years earlier. And in that moment, Rose fully understood. Mr. Richard hadn't given her money. He had given her a purpose, a mission, a legacy. That night, back in her office, Rose wrote in her journal, "Dear Mr. Richard, it's been 8 years since you changed my life. The foundation now helps over 1,000 families a year. Lucy is going to study social work. Even Victoria found her way. But most importantly, today I helped another single mother at your cafe table, the same table where you first saw me. The circle continues. Your legacy continues, and every life we change is a tribute to you, the man who taught me that true wealth is not in what you have, but in what you give. Thank you for seeing me, for believing in me, for teaching me that family doesn't always come by blood, but by choice. I love you, Grandpa." Rose closed the journal and looked at the photo of Mr. Richard on her desk. In the picture, he was in the Daily Grind cafe, smiling with a cup of coffee in his hand. "I kept my promise," Rose whispered. "Your legacy will live forever. And somewhere, in some corner of the universe where good souls rest," Richard Sterling smiled, because in the end, he had found what everyone seeks, a purpose that transcends death, a love that never ends. A legacy that lives in every life changed, in every smile returned, in every renewed hope.